You ever notice how tired you feel after explaining yourself to people who were never careful with your truth? Not the loud kind of tired, the kind that follows you home, sits beside you while you check your phone, and makes you wonder why being understood has started costing you so much. Maybe you have been calling it honesty, loyalty, or being open. But deep down, you know something has been leaking. Your energy, your peace, your ability to change without being watched. At some point, you have to ask why so many people have access to the version of you that is still under construction. Why every weak moment becomes a conversation. Why every private wound needs an audience. This video is not about disappearing from life. It is about learning who deserves to find you after the door closes first. At some point, you stop calling it honesty and start recognizing it as exposure. You feel it in the strange emptiness after you have explained yourself again. You told someone why you disappeared. Read why you are not the same lately. And when the conversation ends, nothing feels lighter. You just feel like another room inside you has been left unlocked. That is the part nobody sees. The slow leak, the way you keep giving people access to the version of you that is still bleeding, still learning, still trying to stand without shaking. You think you are being open. You think maybe if they understand the whole story, they will handle you with more care. So you explain the wound while it is still fresh. You share the disappointment before you have understood it. You let people watch your confusion like it is a public place. And sometimes they do not mock you. They do something quieter. They mishandle what you trusted them with. They remember your weak moment longer than they remember your effort. They bring up what you said when you were tired. They look at your healing stage and mistake it for your identity. That is when something in you starts to pull back, not because you have become cold, not because you hate people, but because you finally notice how many open doors you have been living with. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could comment on the mess. Anyone could step over the fragile parts and call it concern. You begin to see that sensitivity was never the problem. The problem was giving unearned access to places inside you that were not ready for visitors. There are thoughts you should not have to defend before you understand them. There are decisions that need silence before they need opinions. There are private battles that lose strength when you keep narrating them to people who only know how to consume your pain, not protect it. You may have called it communication, but sometimes it was a quiet form of begging. Begging to be understood. Begging to be seen correctly. Begging someone to say, "I get it," so you could stop feeling alone with what you carry. But the more you explain to people who have not earned the truth of you, the smaller you feel afterward. So privacy begins differently than you expected. It does not arrive with anger. It arrives with fatigue. You come home tired and choose not to type the long message. You see the notification and let it wait. You feel the urge to over-explain, and for the first time, you let the silence hold its shape, not to punish them, to protect what is under construction. That shift is uncomfortable because part of you still wants to be known. You still want someone to understand the weight of your survival, but now you are learning that being known is not the same as being accessed. Closeness is not proven by how much you expose. Healing is not measured by how many people can watch you struggle. You are allowed to build without an audience. You are allowed to change without announcing the blueprint. You are allowed to become quieter while becoming stronger. And one day, you realize peace did not begin when everyone finally understood you. Peace began when you stopped handing keys to people who only came to look around. Not everyone deserves to witness the construction side of your life. There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to prove you are not who they decided you were. You do not always notice it at first. It looks like posting a small win so somebody knows you are doing better. It sounds like explaining your new routine to someone who only remembers your old mistakes. It feels like checking your phone after you said something honest, waiting to see if the right person finally understands. And when they do not respond the way you hoped, something in you drops. That is the part you have to look at without lying to yourself. Sometimes you are not sharing progress because you are confident. You are sharing it because there is still a wound inside you, asking to be witnessed by the same people who dismissed you when you were falling apart. You want them to see you waking up earlier, training your body, saving money, staying calm, choosing silence. NCE instead of drama. You want them to regret how lightly they treated you. You want proof that your change has reached their eyes. But that need has a cost. Every time your progress needs an audience too early, your discipline bends toward performance. You stop asking, "Is this making me stronger?" and start asking, "Will they notice?" You begin shaping your healing into something presentable, not something honest, something clean enough to be respected. You become tempted to announce the decision before you have survived the hard days of keeping it. A person who is truly rebuilding does not always look impressive. Some days it looks boring. Some days it looks boring. Some days it looks like coming home tired and still washing the plate instead of letting the room fall apart. It looks like not replying with anger, even though your hands are ready to type. It looks like training when your mood is not dramatic enough for a story. It looks like being unseen while you keep doing the work anyway. That is where regress becomes real. Not when someone claps. Not when someone finally admits they misjudged you. Not when your silence starts making people curious. Progress becomes real when you stop needing the people who noticed your weakness to certify your strength. Because some people are not watching you to understand you. They are watching for evidence that you are still the person they feel comfortable underestimating. They may overlook 10 quiet improvements and remember one tired moment. They may call your growth a phase. They may treat your discipline like a performance because they can avoid respecting it. So you have to take your life back from their eyes. This does not mean hiding out of fear. It means protecting the early version of your change from noise. It means letting your routine grow roots before you expose it to opinions. It means moving without announcing every internal decision, because the strongest parts of you are often built before anyone knows what you are building. You do not need to convince them that you are different today. Live in such a way that convincing becomes unnecessary. Let the work become private enough to be sincere. Let your peace stop auditioning for people who only applauded your pain when it made them feel superior. Let them misunderstand the quiet. Let them think nothing is happening. One day, the evidence will not be a post, a speech, or an explanation. It will be you, standing there, no longer needing their recognition to know you have changed. The hardest part is not the silence around you. It is the noise that finally has nowhere to hide. When you step away from the constant explaining, checking, reacting, and proving, you imagine peace will arrive quickly. You think privacy will feel soft, like a closed door that finally keeps the world out. But then you sit there, alone with yourself, and the room feels heavier than you expected. No one is interrupting you. No one is misunderstanding you. No one is giving you a sign to defend, perform, or collapse. And somehow, that makes it harder. Because now the old version of you has no crowd to disappear into. It starts small. You reach for your phone when the discomfort rises. Not because there is anything important there, but because silence is asking something from you. You think about sending a message you already know will reopen a wound. You almost explain yourself to someone who has shown you they only listen when it benefits them. You feel the old urge to react, to make noise, to be seen immediately, because waiting feels like losing control. That is when you realize the old identity did not survive only because of other people. It survived because it knew your patterns. It knew the exact hour when you became weak. It knew how loneliness changed your standards. It knew how regret could make you reach backward. It knew how one bad night could convince you to return to habits you spent weeks trying to escape. And this is the part that stings. Solitude does not automatically make you wiser. Silence does not magically heal what you refuse to face. Privacy only removes the audience. It leaves you with the habit, the impulse, the hunger to be understood right now. It shows you the places where you still bargain with yourself. It shows you how quickly you look for distraction when your own thoughts stop being polite. In that private room, there is no one left to blame for the broken routine. No one forced you to avoid the work. No one made you reopen the conversation. No one placed the old comfort in your hand and told you to choose it. You begin to see that the real battle is not just keeping certain people outside your life. It is keeping the weakest part of you from opening the door for them again. That realization can feel ugly, but it is also the beginning of something honest. Because for the first time, you are not rebuilding for a reaction. You are not trying to look disciplined. You are standing in the quiet where Ipline has to become real or disappear. You put the phone down. You do the small thing you promised yourself when nobody is impressed. You let the feeling pass without obeying it. This is not dramatic. It is almost invisible, but inside, something loses power. Every time you do not answer the impulse, the old identity gets weaker. Every time you stay with the discomfort instead of escaping it, the mirror becomes less terrifying. You start to understand that privacy was never just about hiding from people. It was the place where you could finally hear the truth without performing around it. And the truth is this: the life you are trying to build will not be created by the part of you that still needs rescue from every quiet moment. It begins when you can sit alone with the old self knocking and not open the door. Before you step back into the world, you have to decide what the world is no longer allowed to take from you. Because rebuilding in private is not just about getting It is about getting clear. Clear about who gets your time. Clear about who gets your honesty. Clear about who is allowed close enough to affect your nervous system, your sleep, your choices, your sense of worth. You cannot return with the same open hands and call it growth just because your mood is calmer now. That is where many people lose themselves again. They disappear for a while. They heal a little. They feel steadier. Then the same people return with the same tone, the same half apology, the same casual access, and because loneliness still has a voice, they let the door open. Not fully at first, just a little. One late reply. One unnecessary explanation. One more chance given from a place that is not peace, but fear of losing connection. And slowly, the old cycle recognizes the entrance. You start answering messages that disturb you. You stay in conversations that shrink you. You let people joke about things that still hurt. You give emotional discounts to people who would never pay the full price of accountability. You tell yourself, it is not that serious, while your body already knows it is costing you something. This is why standards have to come before visibility. Before people see the new version of you, you have to know what the new version no longer negotiates. Not as a speech, not as an announcement, as a quiet agreement you keep when nobody is there to praise your self-respect. You decide that your time is not a waiting room for people who only come around when they are bored. You decide that your emotional availability is not a public service. You decide that communication must carry respect, not just attention. You decide that intimacy cannot be built on confusion, mixed signals, and the small humiliation of always wondering where you stand. And maybe this feels harsh at first, because the old you was trained to confuse access with love. If someone wanted to talk, you responded. If someone missed you, you softened. If someone you forgot yourself. You were so afraid of seeming difficult that you became easy to disturb. But peace requires a different kind of loyalty. You have to become loyal to the version of you that finally wants to sleep without anxiety. Loyal to the part of you that is tired of recovering from conversations. Loyal to the quiet life you keep saying you want, but keep interrupting for temporary closeness. Temporary closeness can feel warm in the moment. It can feel like relief when the night is long and the phone is in your hand. But if it asks you to abandon your standards, it is not closeness. It is a familiar doorway back into confusion. So you begin again, slower this time. You do not rush to be seen. You do not rush to be chosen. You do not rush to prove that you can handle people who have already shown you what they do with access. You build rules inside yourself, and you live by them quietly. You let your actions become the boundary. You let your absence explain what your words used to beg people to understand. And the moment you stop negotiating your peace for a few hours of attention, something settles inside you. You realize self-respect is not loud. It is the calm refusal to keep handing your life to anyone who makes you smaller just to feel close. Silence will show you who was attached to your presence and who was only attached to your availability. And first, it hurts in a quiet way. You stop reaching first. You stop explaining why your energy feels different. You stop checking whether they notice the distance. And then the room around certain relationships becomes strangely empty. No question, no effort, no concern, just a gap where you used to carry everything. That is when your chest tightens. Because part of you hoped they would feel the absence. You hoped they would ask if you were okay without needing a performance first. You hoped the connection had more weight than your constant effort. But silence has a way of removing the decorati on. It strips the relationship down to what is actually there, not what you kept imagining could be there if you loved harder, explained better, stayed longer, answered faster. Some people were not close to you. They were close to the convenience of you. The quick replies. The emotional labor, the way you made space for their chaos while hiding your own. They liked the version of you who always understood, always softened, always returned after being disappointed. They did not have to build a bridge toward you because you kept walking across the distance alone. When you stop, everything becomes visible. Not immediately. Silence does not give you a clean answer in one day. It asks you to sit through the urge to fix the silence yourself. It asks you not to send the message just to reduce the ache. It asks you not to confuse anxiety with love, or loneliness with proof that you chose wrong. You may check your phone more than you want to admit. You may feel foolish for caring. You may replay old conversations and wonder if you were too harsh, too distant, too difficult. But look closer. If a connection can only survive when you abandon your own peace, then silence did not destroy it. Silence revealed the cost you were paying to keep it alive. That is not bitterness. That is clarity. You are not stepping back to punish people. You are stepping back to observe what remains when you no longer emotionally feed every bond with your exhaustion. You are letting people show you whether they respect your distance, whether they notice your humanity, whether they can handle a version of you that no longer performs closeness on command. And some will surprise you. quietly, gently. They will not demand an explanation for your silence. They will not make your boundary about their ego. They will give you room and still keep respect in their hands. Those are the people you begin to recognize differently, but others will only reach when access disappears. They will not miss you. They will miss what you provided, the attention, the comfort, the familiar door they never had to knock on properly. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. So let the silence continue long enough to tell the truth. Let it sort what your tired heart could not. Let it separate real care from habit, respect from attachment, presence from dependency. You do not have to hate anyone to stop carrying connections that collapse the moment you put them down. The pain is real, but so is the relief, because one day you will understand that silence did not leave you empty. It returned your energy to the person who needed it most, you. The first sign that you are changing is not that nothing hurts you anymore. It is that the same thing happens, and you do not rush to become the old version of yourself. Someone ignores you, and your chest still feels it. Someone criticizes you with that familiar tone, and for a second, your body remembers every time you had to defend your worth. You see Opal from your past watching quietly, maybe waiting for you to slip, curious about whether you are still easy to disturb. And there is a part of you that wants to react exactly the way you used to. You want to explain. You want to prove the point. You want to show them they do not have that power over you, which already means they almost do. That moment matters, because growth is not always a grand display of control. Sometimes it is the 5 seconds where your hand is on the phone, your message is half-written, your pride is awake, and you choose not to send it. Not because you are scared, not because you lost the argument, because you are starting to understand that every feeling does not deserve the steering wheel. You still feel things, deeply, sometimes. You may still feel the sting of being replaced, the irritation of being underestimated, the heat that rises when someone speaks about you like they know a version of you that no longer exists. But now, something inside you CS before turning pain into behavior. That pause is where the new life begins. The old you needed motion, a reply, a reaction, a defense, a late-night paragraph that left you emptier than before. The old you believed silence meant weakness, leaving meant defeat, and not being understood meant you had to keep talking until someone finally saw you clearly. But private rebuilding changes your relationship with urgency. You begin to notice that many reactions were not truth. They were reflexes, a nervous system protecting itself with noise, a wounded ego trying to regain control, a lonely part of you trying to make someone care by giving them more access to your pain. And now you are learning emotional pacing. You do not have to answer at the speed of the wound. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited into. You do not have to turn every disappointment into an investigation of your value. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let the moment pass without building a home inside it. This feels strange at first because triggers used to give you identity. They told you who to fight, who to chase, what to fix, where to bleed. Without them controlling you, the day can feel almost too quiet. But that quiet is not emptiness. It is freedom arriving without applause. You become boring to the old trap. The insult does not pull a speech from you. The distance does not make you beg. The silence does not make you panic. The person watching from the past does not make you perform progress for approval. You see it, feel it, breathe through it, and keep your life moving. That is not numbness, that is ownership. You are no longer handing your behavior to whoever knows where to press. You are no longer letting one message, one absence, one careless sentence decide the shape of your whole night. And maybe this is the deepest kind of change. Not becoming untouchable, but becoming unavailable to the reactions that used to own you. The dangerous moment is not when you are breaking. It is when you start feeling okay again. That is when the old door starts looking harmless. You wake up lighter for a few days. You do not check their name as much. You eat properly. You clean the room. You train once, maybe twice. You feel that small return of control, and a thought slips in quietly. Maybe I can handle it now. Maybe one conversation will not hurt. Maybe one reply will prove I am not attached anymore. Be careful with that thought. One good week can feel like freedom when you have spent months surviving your own mind. It can make you confuse relief with recovery. It can make you believe the storm is over just because the room is quiet. But peace that has not been tested yet is still delicate. It may be real, but it is not stable enough to be placed back inside the same pressure that almost broke you. You know this pattern. You start feeling better, and because the pain is not screaming anymore, you think the lesson is complete, so you reopen the conversation. You answer the message you ignored. You return to the circle where you had to shrink yourself to belong. You revisit the habit that used to numb you, telling yourself you are only checking whether it still has power. And sometimes, nothing happens at first. That is what makes it dangerous. The old thing greets you softly. The old person sounds calmer. The old routine feels familiar. Then slowly, your sleep changes. Your focus thins. Your standards become negotiable again. You start explaining more than you planned. You start waiting for a response you told yourself did not matter. That is how the old life returns. Not with violence. With permission. This is the uncomfortable truth. Feeling better does not always mean you are ready. Sometimes it only means your nervous system finally got space. Sometimes distance has started doing its work, but the work is not finished. Real rebuilding needs repetition. It needs ordinary days where you keep choosing the new path without drama. It needs enough silence for the new version of you to stop being a mood and become a structure. Patience is not weakness here. Patience is protection. You are not delaying your life. You are letting it harden in the right places. You are giving your standards time to become natural. You are giving your peace enough roots that one lonely night, one emotional message, or one familiar face cannot pull the whole thing out of the ground. There will be days when you feel strong enough to return. Do not measure strength by how brave you feel in a calm moment. Measure it by what you choose when pressure touches you again. When you are tired, when you are misunderstood, when nobody is praising your restraint, when the old comfort is right there, acting like it never cost you anything. Stay private a little longer. Let your calm become practiced. Let your silence become steady. Let your new habits survive more than one good week. The door does not have to stay closed forever, but you do not open it while the new self is still learning how to stand. Because the real test is not whether you can feel better away from what harmed you. It is whether you can protect that better feeling long enough to become someone who no longer runs back the moment the pain gets quiet. Do not expect your return to look dramatic. The deepest changes rarely walk back into the world, making noise. One day, you simply stop hiding in the same way. You answer a message without needing to explain the last few months. You show up somewhere and notice that you no longer scan the room for who approves of you, who misunderstood you, who still carries the old version of your name in their mouth. You are there, but not open in the same careless way. Present, but not available to everything. That is the difference. Before, you came into rooms with too many doors unlocked. People could reach your mood with one comment. They could pull your attention with one vague message. They could make you. You defend a decision you had already made in pain, silence, and private discipline. You thought being understood required full exposure, so you kept offering explanations to people who only wanted enough information to feel involved. Now something in you moves slower, not weak, slower. You do not rush to prove that you have healed. You do not perform peace for people who once benefited from your confusion. You do not announce every lesson like you need the world to sign it before it becomes real. Some changes are allowed to remain private. Some growth does not need witnesses. Some boundaries work best when they are simply lived, not explained in advance. And yes, there may still be pressure. Someone may ask why you are different. Someone may act offended by the distance. Someone may test the old handle, the old guilt, the old soft place where they used to push and watch you bend. For a moment, you may feel the familiar pull to over-explain, to make them comfortable, to prove that our boundary is not rejection. But this time, you remember yourself. Access is not automatic anymore. It has timing. It has trust. It has weight. It is not given because someone is curious, lonely, familiar, or loud enough to disturb your calm. It is given slowly, through consistency, through respect, through the quiet evidence that someone can be near your life without trying to own your energy. That is emotional maturity, not shutting everyone out, not becoming hard, not punishing the world because you were hurt. It is learning that your inner life is not a hallway for every passing person. It is learning that closeness should not require self-abandonment. It is learning that peace is something you guard without apology. You begin to re-enter life differently. You laugh without oversharing. You care without carrying everyone. You listen without absorbing every emotion in the room. You can love people and still let them face the consequences of their own choices. You can be kind without being reachable at every hour. You can be open without becoming exposed. This is what your private season was preparing you for. Not disappearance forever, not bitterness, not revenge, a return with discernment, a presence that no longer begs to be chosen, a heart that knows the difference between connection and access. And the world may not understand the change immediately. Let it take time. Let people meet the boundary before they meet the deeper parts of you. Let them learn that your silence was not emptiness. It was construction. Now you come back with less noise, fewer open doors, and a deeper loyalty to the person you almost lost while trying to be available to everyone else. If this video reached a part of you that has been quietly tired, do not rush past that feeling. Let it stay with you for a moment. Maybe the next chapter of your life is not about proving anything louder. Maybe it is about becoming more careful with your access, your energy, and your peace. If you are rebuilding in private, leave a comment with one word: quiet. Not for attention, but as a small reminder that you are not the only one choosing a different way. Like this video, if it helped you see something you were carrying without naming it. Subscribe if you want more deep reflections on silence, discipline, emotional control, and self-respect. And stay close to this channel, because the work we talk about here is not about looking strong. It is about becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves.